Perfect. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Shreya, and welcome to episode 2 of our interview series, A Doctor's Journey. So today we have a very special guest with us, and his name is Dr. Shah. Doctor, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to speak with us. With that being said, let's get started. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm living the dream. So thank you so much for having me on here. I love doing these. So
Of course. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and even your specialty?
yeah, sure. So like you said, my name is Dr. Darsha. I am a first year physical medicine and rehabilitation resident at Penn State Hershey. Currently doing my first year, so it's a preliminary medicine year. I just graduated from medical school from Beacon, Virginia, so out at Blacksburg, Virginia. And my goals are to practice integrative and functional medicine eventually. So I love the alternative treatment, holistic type of care. Fellowship wise, we'll see, maybe sports medicine, maybe something like regenerative medicine. And then in my free time, I'm very active on social media. I'm a pre-med coach. I have a host. I am the host of a podcast called Medicine Redefined, where we, try to talk about putting the health back in healthcare, which we can probably get into as we go on here. But that's essentially me. I'm really into fitness, working out, optimizing everything, mindset and lifestyle. So that's kind of what I do on the Instagram.
That's really interesting. You're kind of like all over the place. You're
Right.
doing a
Yeah.
little bit about everything. Love it, love it. So can you tell, so like you said already, so can you tell our viewers just specifically one more time where you're located and where you practice?
Yeah, so I am at Hershey, Pennsylvania, doing a physical medicine and rehabilitation residency.
So now dedicating your life to helping those in need truly is a really big commitment, right? So can you tell us a little bit about how or when you decided that you wanted to pursue medicine?
Yeah, so man, it's really funny because I really don't think anyone knows they want to do medicine until they're actually a doctor, to really understand how this is why I went into it. So the earliest I can remember me being interested in medicine was probably like first, second, third grade. Whenever anyone asked like, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" and I had to write it down, I would write neurosurgeon because I knew the E came before the U, and even then I thought I was like, "Oh man, I'm super smart. I'm probably the only third grader who knows this," and I'm not a neurosurgeon. So, but like growing up, my parents, and again, being brown, you would think they'd be like, "Oh, why don't you go into sciences or something?" My dad was always like, "Why don't you try business? Like everyone we know goes into medicine. Like, why not? Why be blinded by a field just because your own people are going into it?" So I was always like, no, like I was very good at math. I was very good at the sciences. So kind of just stayed on that track. Ended up going to Temple University, being like in a BSMD program. So like 3 years undergrad, 4 years med school. However, I missed the GPA cutoff by 0.02. So that was like the biggest blessing in disguise. But still, it was still set in stone that I wanted to go to med school. So, after 2 gap years, 3 application cycles, finally got in. And as you go through the journey, you keep asking yourself like, why am I doing this? Why am I really here? And it's funny because I think it was probably about 3 or 4 months ago where I really, really honed in on to why I love what I do. And I just remember ever since I was younger, I loved helping people that I didn't even know. So like I would always volunteer to be the tour guide. I would always volunteer to if people are lost on the street, I would go up to them and be like, "Hey, do you need help with directions?" And to me, it was more about building a social connection and a meaningful connection with people that I didn't even know. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. And I thought I had a knack for that. And I just really love understanding people's stories, what makes people the way they are, and helping them so that they can live, a better, healthier, more prosperous life.
Wow. And to kind of go on of that, it's interesting because like as a kid, like I kind of was this kind of same person, right? Like I always wanted to help people out. I was always trying to do whatever I can to help people out. And I think that's such an interesting quality when you start to grow up and you realize that, okay, maybe I want to help people in terms of biology. I want to start helping people as a doctor. And um, I don't know. I always found that kind of as an indicator of perhaps, okay, if you really enjoy helping people, maybe biology, maybe medicine is the way to go for you. Okay, moving
Yeah,
on.
for sure.
As a doctor, I'm sure you are very, very busy. How do you manage to keep the work and life balance?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So again, everything you're asking, I was like, I literally think about on the daily. And so one of the things is like, I don't like to tell people I'm busy or I don't like to think I'm busy, right? Because I think busy is a way of telling ourselves that we're important and that we don't have time for anything else. So I like to view it as productive, right? Because a single mother working 2 jobs or 3 jobs is busier than I am, right? There are people who are doing way more meaningful things to their own personal life than I might be doing. So for me, looking at work life, I look at it as a way of looking at how productive can I be. So, let's say you work on average 70 hours per week. So 168 hours in a week, and then your 70 hours you're working. Let's say you're sleeping for 8 hours a day. So whatever, that's 64. If you add those up and then you subtract the 168 from that, it's about like 35 to 40 hours. So you still have 40 hours per week. So if you divide that by whatever, 7, let's say you have 5 hours per day to still do whatever you want. And so in those 5 hours, let's say hour a day I use for like working out and fitness, another hour I'll use to read, another hour I'll work on my podcast, another hour I'll use to eat or like cook and make healthy stuff. Like there's still enough time for us to do the things that we want to do, right? I just think it's easy for us to make excuses when we say we're busy and all these things. But I think the work life is always going to be there if you want it to be there, and again, like I don't identify myself as a doctor because the moment I do, I take away from everything else in my life. And so a doctor is what I do. It's not necessarily who I am, right? That was the best advice I've received in medical school was from our microbiology professor who said that. And it sticks with me till this day because it allows me to kind of get my hands dirty in a bunch of different things.
For sure. Okay, that was really insightful. Thank you. And our
Yeah.
viewers at home, I'm sure they're learning so much from this experience.
Mhm.
Um, could you tell us about a specific moment during your medical journey or when you started becoming a doctor in which you were faced with a great difficulty? So perhaps how did you overcome this? Or was there anything that you learned from that moment that really helped you grow into the person that you are today?
Yeah. Definitely the hardest moment I would say was not being accepted through that, 7-year med program, missing the GPA cut off by 0.02, thinking, everything is going right for you, thinking that, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake. I'm just going to be a doctor, right? So high school, I crushed, right? I did very well. And the reason I tell my stats, right? I got 2140 SAT, top 2%, ranked 19 out of 1,050, MVP of like tennis team, all these things. I tell these stats because once you see me at Temple University, it's the exact opposite, right? I slowly become a nobody, so to speak, right? Nobody really knows me. I'm here at a 35,000 class size. My GPA is not the greatest. I had to take the MCAT twice because your stats don't define you. None of those numbers make you who you are. And that was a big wake up call for me is when I didn't get in, letting that ego drop and say, wow, I'm not maybe as special as I thought I was. I have to work just as hard as everyone else. But that was the biggest blessing because I don't think I was ready enough to go to medical school at the age of 21 or 22. There's no way. And that's why I think there's the average age for a first year medical student right now is about 24 or 25 years old. It's because you need that mental maturity to kind of just grow up and learn who you are. And so in those 2 years that I had as a gap year, really learned a lot about myself, right? So I was a medical scribe, I was a lab technician, I did cancer rehab research, I drove for Lyft, I backpacked Europe. And in those times, right, those 2 years, I really delved into self-improvement, self-growth, reading a lot of these books. And that's really shaped me into who I am. This is why I got into Instagram and, decided to be quote unquote like a life coach, even though I don't have any certifications, but just mentorship and trying to become the best version of myself every day. It was because of those 2 years that I had off.
Wow, I see. Wow.
Yeah.
Um, what, in your opinion, defines success? I mean, success has such a broad concept and it's kind of different for everyone, right? To you,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah. It's a great question. Me and my mentee were talking about this 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
Um, for me, success, I think, comes down to you being comfortable in living in your own skin. First, I just think like as long as you don't have to prove anything to anybody, not necessarily saying that you shouldn't be proving. I think we're all proving ourselves every single day, right? That's the only way we kind of climb the ladder. But being comfortable in when you're doing it, right? Enjoying the journey. I think success is not necessarily always looking at the destination, but being present, enjoying the journey and where you are, and being grateful through that journey. I think defines success because in the end, you might make it or you might not, but as long as you enjoyed it, you were successful.
For sure. Wow. Yeah, a lot of people today, especially like people that I know that I'm personal friends with,
Yeah.
it's often that people consider success as like numerical value, right?
100%.
Test
Yeah. I
scores.
think that's like,
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, so I think is exactly like with the social media and with Instagram, with TikTok, all we're seeing are the glam side of things, right? And now anyone can label themselves as anything they want, right? So I was just in a, I don't know if you know what Clubhouse is. It's like this new social media app that's like
Oh, yeah.
audio chat in. So they were just talking about this, and one of the Clubhouse was like, nowadays, like all these personal trainers, whoever can just label themselves as an expert in something, or I'm successful as this, right? So now we get a false sense of what success is when we see other people's profiles. And that's what's dangerous, right? Because now you lose what the hard work means, what the journey means, and all those things
Mhm.
when it's just a quick fix. Oh, I can just become anything I want,
Yeah, yeah,
So,
exactly. Like success, yes, it requires hard work, but at the same time, you have to be enjoying it, and it's not necessarily about the numerical values. The test score is what you've achieved, really, right?
or the number of followers. That's right.
True, true. um, are there any particular goals or ambitions that you are currently working towards?
Yeah, so I think, man, there's a lot. There's, personal goals, there's goals in work, there's goals with side hustles, there's goals with my relationship, with my wife. Everything is almost a goal to strive for, right? So just looking at the business aspect of things, trying to grow this podcast, trying to get it to as many people as possible, trying to change the mindsets of a lot of our doctors and a lot of our med students and those going into medicine, becoming more holistic, integrated, realizing that, hey, there's chronic illness out here and we're not really learning or doing anything to treat these things. But then in the end, I think the biggest goal for me is just becoming a better version of myself every single day. I don't know who that's going to be, right? So it says Matthew McConaughey says when you ask him who's your greatest idol, and he says it's myself in 10 years, because you're never going to catch up to who that person is. So it's always going to be ahead of you, but at least you're trying and striving to be a better version of yourself.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
um, okay, so on your social media, I've seen that you've recommended some really, really interesting books that I actually
Mm,
took time to kind of research. They were really interesting,
yeah.
actually. Is there any one book in particular that you think everyone should read at least once in their lifetime? What is the main message or theme that they should take away from the book?
Yeah, this is really easy for me. Usually, like when people ask me about books and certain topics, I'm like, but if there's one, it would have to be How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Now, Dale Carnegie is like the master of self-development, self-improvement books back in like the 20s. And this is one of the first books he wrote in terms of how to create better relationships, better value, and how to get what you want by giving. Right. So there's another book called Give and Take by Adam Grant, which is kind of like a spinoff off of this. But How to Win Friends and Influence People by far has changed the way that I talk to people, has changed the way that I look at different scenarios when, you might be in a catch 22, but how to get the most out of it. And what I love is it's about giving. It's about looking at the other person. It's about being genuine and authentic. And by doing those things, you'll slowly start to see like that law of attraction work for you.
I see. Yeah, for sure. You gotta
Yeah.
give to get, for sure.
Right.
Thank you. What do you believe to be some of the most pressing health issues today that we are dealing with on a national and global scale, now looking towards the medicine side?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you got COVID, right? But I'll skip
Well, yeah,
that because we all know it's COVID right now.
yeah.
But again, chronic illness, especially here in the Western society, like the United States, it's insane. It's like 90 to 95% of diseases that we see in the hospital are chronic. The
Mm.
problem is we're treating these chronic diseases with acute treatments, right? So they come in for heart failure, they come in with a COPD exacerbation, or they have diabetes. All we're doing is treating their symptoms and telling them to go home. There's nothing about the root cause in there that we're figuring out. We're not figuring
That
out
are
their
preventing.
lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not preventing it, right? So even if we can't prevent and they're well on their way with diabetes, how can we at least mitigate some of that, right? How can we at least teach them to live a better lifestyle so that they don't have to come into the hospital, so that they can lose the weight, so they can take their medications, right? It's a lot of habit changing. It's a lot of just lifestyle intervention. But obviously, given the insurance system, doctors are pretty much practicing with both hands tied behind their back. And so in 15 minutes, there's no way somebody can influence a patient to, change their life. So that's definitely one of them, is like chronic illness, obesity. Right now, 41% of like the nation's obese. That number's well going to be above 50 in the next 10 years.
For sure.
So definitely some scary stuff. So yeah, hopefully just trying to make everyone healthy.
And that's what you kind of mentioned at the beginning. You're like, put the health back into healthcare, and that's what I think
Exactly.
you mean, right?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. So how has COVID, and I'm sure this is a very generic question, but how has
Yeah.
COVID-19 personally changed your lifestyle or impacted your workplace, considering you're
Yeah, I would say as a resident for sure, right? Not necessarily in terms of it being busier and schedule changes. Like, of course, those things definitely happen. But I can't really compare it to a maskless residency. But I can tell you from what I've heard from a lot of people is that residency is also supposed to be like a very social experience. You're supposed to get close to your co-residents, like their family, right? You're all going through 70, 80-hour weeks. It's tough. It's grueling. You're always looking for that shoulder to lean on. And that's very tough to do during COVID when everyone's wearing a mask. Imagine me doing the interview like this. Like, yeah, it's like, how do you even get to know who I am unless you can really see my emotion, the way I'm smiling, all of that stuff. So it's
Right.
really tough to get to know your co-residents in a time like this. Obviously we all understand like what's going on. It's tough to do hangouts. We try to hang out whenever possible, but that's the toughest thing, is having that social support, especially when times can be grueling like now.
For sure, for sure. Now, as an organization, MetaNet, right now, we
Mhm.
work towards and with the underprivileged communities to provide education towards basic sanitation, healthcare practices, and to generally help raise awareness on global health, really. So, with that being said, now, what are some ways that you believe we can work together and create positive change for our global society regarding healthcare medicine?
Yeah. First and foremost, it comes down to changing our mindsets as physicians, right? Like physicians have to walk the walk in order to be able to tell the globe what needs to be done, right? Even if it's basic sanitation and stuff. I really do believe that physicians need to be more educated in terms of nutrition, fitness, lifestyle, basic lifestyle things that matter, especially globally. We look at blue zones, right? The only blue zone in the US is, and so I should preface what blue zones are. Blue zones are areas around the world where they have the highest number of people living above 100. And Loma Linda, California is one of them. And you look at their lifestyle and you look at what they do, and it has a lot of movement, a lot of plant-based meals, a lot of social compatibility with the community. So those are the things that we need to embody ourselves before we can even go out and like teach anyone these things. And again, I think, I was just listening to a podcast about this, about creating change and creating lifestyle habits. We often think that it's about consistency. It's about, oh, if you do this habit for 66 days, it's now going to be ingrained in your head. And now we're starting to realize that's not true. It actually comes down to the emotion attached to that habit. So you always have to figure out your why behind the action.
Mhm.
So, for example, if we're trying to cut down sanitation, or if you're trying to help sanitation, cut down dirty water supply, all these different things, it's understanding why those things matter, right? So when you talk to the mother saying, hey, do you want to, you don't want to lose your child. You don't want your child to grow up motherless, right? If you're talking to the grandmother who needs to start working out, getting more fit, don't you want to be able to get down on the ground and play with your grandkids at some age, and, these types of things. So I think we really have to rewire the human brain and the way that we talk to patients and other people.
For sure, because you could say that, okay, yeah, this has to get done, but if you don't attach any kind of emotion to it, if you don't explain why, then no one's gonna follow you or actually go through with what you're saying.
Exactly. Yep.
Now, finally, is there any piece of advice or just a general message that you would leave the viewers today with?
Yeah. So are most of your viewers like pre-med? What would most of your viewers be in
We have a
category
couple
wise?
a lot of high school students actually. There's pre-med as well. A lot of students are in college. We have a couple medicine students as well.
Okay, so definitely like undergrad, like a
For sure.
younger kind of age, undergrad, high school. All right. So my biggest advice to them would be, there's a lot of talk about finding your passion, finding your purpose, figuring out these things, figuring out your truth. Just remember that your truth is always going to evolve. You're never going to catch that purpose or passion. So don't focus on it. Don't focus on your passion. Focus on skills, focus on diversity, focus on experiences that make you happy and increase your knowledge base. I think when you can do those things, delve into so many different interests. If I could go back, I would not have done a biology major. I was actually forced to because I was in the program. But even if I wasn't in the program, I would have done something like business or computer science, because it's your only 4 years left where you can delve into a topic. You're going to be doing medicine the rest of your life if you choose to do medicine. There's no point. None of that stuff really translates into medical school. But then on the flip side too is just that your truth is ever evolving. Don't like if you don't want to, if you don't know if you want to do medical school, don't jump into it. Figure yourself out. Take the time to understand yourself, and you'll be ways happier. And then again, enjoy the journey as you do it. But just realize passion, purpose, truth. These are all things that we're taught at a young age with what do you want to be when you grow up. But a lot of these things can shape the way you think, but don't let it. Just focus on being yourself and enjoying the journey.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said, this does wrap up the interview. I just wanted to thank you so much for being here with us today. And to our viewers, please be safe. All right, so Dr. Shah, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Ray. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for having me here.
Of course. All right, take care.
Yeah. Bye.
All right, bye.